Bible and seeing what I can get out about it. I think about it, and if I don't have any particular thoughts, I'm just going to go to um, the next verse, basically. So let's get started here in Judges 1:1 here. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, who will be the first to go up and fight for us against the Canaanites? Judah shall go up, answered the Lord. Indeed, I have delivered the land into their hands. Then the men of Judah said to their brothers, the Simeonites, come up with us to our allotted territory, and let us fight against the Canaanites. And likewise, we will go with you to your territory. So the Simeonites went with them. When Judah attacked, the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they struck down 10,000 men at Bezek. And there were found Adonai-Bezek and fought against him, striking down the Canaanites and the Perizzites. As Adonai-Bezek fled, they pursued and seized him and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. Pretty brutal. Then Adonai-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off have gathered scraps under my table. As I have done to them, so God has repaid me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, where he died, probably from an infection after getting his thumbs and big toes cut off. Right? So, I think here's kind of my reading of this is it's poetic justice, that's being done here. So that's interesting. Then the men of Judah fought against Jerusalem and captured it. They put the city to the sword and set it on fire. Afterward, the men of Judah marched down to fight against the Canaanites living in the hill country in the Negev and in the foothills. Judah also marched against the Canaanites who were living in Hebron, formerly as Kiriath Arba. And they struck down Sheshai, Armi, and Tamal. From there, they marched against the inhabitants of Debir, formerly known as Kiriath Shapir. And Caleb said, to the man who strikes down Kiriath Shapir and captures it, I will give my daughter Aisha in marriage. So Othniel, son of Caleb's younger brother, Kenaz, captured the city, and Caleb gave his daughter Ashna to him in marriage. One day, Aslan came to Othniel and urged him to ask her father for a field. When she got it for Donker, Caleb asked her, what do you desire? Give me a blessing, she answered. Since you have given me a land in the Negev, give me springs of water as well. And so Caleb gave her both the upper and lower springs. Now, the descendants of Moses' father-in-law, the Karaite, went up to the men of Judah from the city of Palms, and to the wilderness of Judah in the Negev near Arad. They went to live among the people. Then the men of Judah went with their brothers, the Simeonites, attacked the Canaanites living in Zephath, and devoted their city to destruction. So it was called Hormah. So what about Zephath from Judges 1? Okay, so here's the question I have. And I'm probably going to ask my AIs here, ChatGPT, Grok, and Claude. What is the archaeological history of logical and historical information we have about Zephath from Judges? Have we identified the site? And layers. Okay. So I think we got a good question here. What is the archaeological and historical information we have about Zephath from Judges? Have we identified the site? And if so, what are its destruction layers? So I feel like that is a good question. I'm going to use Opus until I run out or something. So the AI are thinking about this question. Okay, and Grok is first. They're talking about Al-Harmath, mentioned only once by that name in Judges. The tribes of Judah and Simeon tax utterly destroy it, devoted to destruction. And it's in this Harmath, destruction, later curse or total dedication. With related tradition, in Canaan from the south, later victory that gave the name, and was assigning it to Simeon within Judah's territory, which is interesting. It's also mentioned in David's time and Arad and the Negev. Ishmael Zephathah may relate to Watchtower. So, Tel Mesos, okay. So there's this crossroads here. And it was a large site during the relevant period. Iron 1 settlement. So 15 acres. So, okay. So there's another one. All right. I didn't realize that had personal information on there. I'm probably going to have to take the stream down once it's finished. So, yes, so there does seem to be a destruction layer that could possibly be associated with this here. That's kind of the question I was asking. And devoted the city to destruction, so it was called Hormah. And Judah also captured Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron, each with his territory. The Lord was with Judah, and they took possession of the hill country. They could not drive out the inhabitants of the plains because they had chariots of iron. Just as Moses had promised, Judah gave Hebron to Caleb, who drove out the descendants of the three sons of Anak. The Benjamites, however, failed to drive out the Jebusites living in Jerusalem. So to this day, the Jebusites live there among the Benjamites. The house of Joseph also attacked Bethel, and the Lord was with them. They sent spies to Bethel, known now as Luz. And it goes back to be called Bethel, apparently, or formerly known as Luz. So it was formerly known as Luz, and then its name got changed to Bethel. And when the spies saw a man coming out of the city, he said to him, "Please show us how to get into the city, and we'll treat you kindly." And they put the city to the sword, but released the man and all his family. And this man went down to the land of the Hittites, built a city, and called it Luz, which is its name to this day. At that time, Manasseh failed to drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shannon, Tanakh, Dor, Evelyn, didn't dwell in them, and what they basically, the Canaanites had fair slavery, but they drove them out completely. Ephraim also failed to drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer, so the Canaanites continued to dwell among them in Gezer. Zebulun failed to drive out the inhabitants, so the Canaanites lived among them and served among them. So what we're saying is that mostly so I think we have this cultural perspective of the conquest as being this absolute thing where nobody was left alive. Whereas honestly, this part of it just seems, and they didn't drive everybody out completely. They still lived there, all that kind of good fun stuff. So yeah, sure. Like, there's this Sunday school version, but I don't think the Sunday school version of the conquest is really all that true. Okay, Asher inhabitants of Akko, Sidon, Abed, Ashod, Abela, Apeleth, and Rehob. So that Asherites lived among the Canaanites and inhabitants of the land because they did not drive them out. I think we're seeing a theme here. Naphtali failed out to inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath. So the Naphtalites also lived about the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath, served them as forced laborers. The Amorites forced the Danites into the hill country and did not allow them to come down into the plain. And the Amorites were the Harries, and when the house of Joseph grew in strength, they pressed the Amorites into forced labor, and the border of the Amorites extended from the ascent to Screbin to Stella and beyond, to Selah and beyond. Any interesting footnotes here? Lowlands, worse than foothills, and he urged her, that is Jericho, Cherim, Lord. Okay. Next. I'm trying to see what the first judge is like. Now, the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to and said, I brought you out. Okay. So here's another one of the proto-Trinitarian transcripts. Now, the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land that I had promised to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you are not to make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall tear down their altars. Okay? And here's the problem. Okay? Or angel. So verse 4. So here's the problem. Okay? We have, if he's, why does he say, I did this, right? He's not saying, okay, thus the Lord says this, okay? Although that you could probably argue that's implied, but it's not actually in the text. Why have you not obeyed my voice? What is this you have done? So now I shall tell you that I will drive out the people before you. They will be a thorn in their sides, and their gods will be a snare to you. And when the angel of the Lord, so here's the problem, is in this speech, right? So in this speech, the angel of the Lord speaks in I terminology and not messenger terminology, right? But is also distinct from God, right? And this is an ambiguity, or not even necessarily an ambiguity, right? Like a Trinitarian reading, this is going to be, well, that was rather straightforward. That the most straightforward way to read this text is in, I'm not going to say most a Trinitarian lens, but that the angel of the Lord is you, and I think you can be agnostic as to how or what that means. But the angel of the Lord is the Lord, right? And honestly, if God can take the form of a burning bush, why not take the form of this? But that's not what I was looking for. But I think that was interesting. Um, After Joshua had dismissed the people, the Israelites went out to take possession of the land, each to his own inheritance, and the people served the Lord throughout the days of Joshua and of the elders that outlived him, who had seen all the great works that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. They buried him in the land of his inheritance in Timothy, hill country of Ethiopia, north of Mount Gash. And after that whole generation had also been gathered to their fathers, another generation rose up who did not know the Lord or the works of them he had done for Israel, and the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. Okay. Thus they forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and they followed after various gods of the people around them. They bowed down to them and provoked the Lord to anger. They bowed down to them and provoked the Lord to anger, for they forsook him, served Baal and the Ashtaroth. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of those who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Wherever Israel marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them to bring them to calamity, just as he had sworn to them. So they were greatly distressed. Okay. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them from the hands of those who plundered them. Israel, however, did not listen to their judges. Instead, they prostituted themselves with other gods and bowed down to them. They quickly turned from the way of their fathers who had walked in obedience to the Lord's commandments. They did not do as their fathers had done. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for the Israelites, he was with that judge and saved them from the hands of their enemies while that judge was still alive. But for the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning under those who oppressed them and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the Israelites became even more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods to serve them and bow down to them. They would not give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. So the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and I'm sorry, one moment. Sorry, I got a call I had to take. And someday I am going to be able to know how this thing works. Anyway, let's get back here. So the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he said, because the nation has transgressed the covenant I laid down for them for their fathers. Okay, so here's one of the questions that I'm trying to figure or think about is where is it that the covenant shows up kind of after the Pentateuch, and how it shows up, and just seeing how it does. Okay, and what it says is that there's this, they're transgressing the covenant, right? And this is why these bad things are happening. These are the nations that the Lord left to test all the Israelites who had not known any of the wars in Canaan, if only you need to teach warfare to the subsequent generations of Israel, especially to those who had not known it formerly, the 5 rulers of the Philistines, all the Canaanites, the Sidonians, and the Hivites who lived in the mountains of Lebanon from Baal Hermon to Lebo Hamath. These nations were left to test the Israelites to find out whether they would keep the commandments of the Lord, which he had given to their fathers through Moses. Thus the Israelites continued to live among the Canaanites, Hittites, Ammonites, Pezerites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and they took the daughters of those people in marriage and gave their own daughters to their sons and served their gods. So the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Ashtoreths. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram Naharaim. And the Israelites served him 8 years. But when the Israelites cried out to the Lord, he raised up Othniel, son of Caleb's younger brother, Kenaz, as a deliverer to save them. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he became Israelites' judge and went out to war. And the Lord delivered Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram, into the hand of Othniel, who prevailed against him. So the land had rest for 4 years till Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. So I think one of the things people note about Judges, right, is that it's not in order of so much of what happens when, but from good judge to bad judge, right? And what we find here is that the story's like just really simple. And he's just like, yep, good judge, land had rest. He delivered him. And he's the son-in-law of Caleb, right? Ehud. And then once again, the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord. So he gave Elgon, king of Moab, power over Israel because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord after enlisting the Ammonites and the Amalekites to join forces with him. Eglon attacked and defeated Israel, taking possession of the city of palms in Israel. So Eglon, Moab, 18 years. And again, they cried out to the Lord, and he raised up Ehud, son of Gera, a left-handed Benjaminite, as their deliverer. And so they sent him with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Ehud had made himself a double-edged sword, a cubit long. He strapped it to his right thigh under his cloak and brought the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was an obese man. After Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he ushered those out who had carried it. But upon reaching the idols near Gilgal, he himself turned back and said, I have a secret for you, O king. Silent, said the king, and all his attendants left him. Then Ehud approached him while he was sitting alone in the coolness of his upper room. I have a word from God for you, Ehud said. And the king rose from his seat. And Ehud reached with his left hand, pulled the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it in Eglon's belly. Even the handle sunk in after the blade, and Eglon's fat closed in over it, so that Ehud did not withdraw the sword from his belly, and Eglon's bowels empty. Then Ehud went out through the porch, closing and locking the doors of the upper room behind him. And after Ehud was gone, Eglon's servants came in and found the doors of the upper room locked. He must be relieving himself in the cool room, they said. So they waited till they became worried and saw that he had still not opened the doors of his upper rooms. Then they took the key and opened the doors, and there was their lord lying dead on the floor. Ehud, however, had escaped while the servants waited. He passed by the idols and escaped to Syria And arriving in Syria, he blew the ram's horn throughout the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites came down with him from the hills, and he became their leader. Follow me, he told them, for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hands. So they followed him down and seized the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and they did not allow anyone to cross over. At that time, they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all robust and valiant men. Not one of them escaped. So Moab was subdued under the hand of Israel that day, and the land had rest for 80 years. Shagmar. After Ehud came Shagmar, son of Anath, and he too saved Israel, striking down 100 Philistines with an ox goad. What is an ox goad? Sorry, have to ask the important questions. So it's an agricultural tool, long wooden stick, about 8 feet wide, with an iron. A spear. He basically took an agricultural tool used to keep oxes going and turned it into a spear. That is Mesopotamia, Aram of the two rivers. Oh, okay. I would have just said Aram of the two rivers if I had checked the footnotes. Likely the region between Euphrates and the Balafra in northwestern Mesopotamia. That is Jericho. Cubit is approximately 18 inches or 45.7 centimeters. Yeah, okay. So I think that's very interesting. Ehud. And then like Othniel. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT's my AI flock what they think of. So okay. So is this a So let's see what they got to say here. Literary theological question, blah, 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 blah. Come on. Who's going to answer me first? Do. Okay. Hmm. So here's an interesting resonance that I'm finding, okay? And what happens is that the book of Judges deeply um, embodies this specific pattern, right? Okay, is that Israel messes up. God says, okay, you're going to have oppression because you're messing up. Israel cries out in distress. God raises up a deliverer. The enemy is defeated, and there's a period of peace. The judge dies, and Israel falls back into sin. Rinse, wash, and repeat. Okay? That's basically the story of Judges over and over and over with Samson being the worst judge, and then there's no judge whatsoever, and then they're cutting up dead women, slaughtering entire tribes, having the remnants of that tribe rape their young women in so that the tribe doesn't die out. Seriously, this is really dark. Judges gets really, really dark. And so what happens is that there's this prophetic pattern, right? Now, what happens to us, right? What happens is that we mess stuff up. And because we mess up, we have oppression in our lives. What happens is that there is this distress call that eventually we make to God. Okay? And what happens is that God raises up a judge or a deliverer, right? And so what happens is that as a Christian, who is our judge / deliverer, right? It's Jesus. Okay? And so what happens is that Jesus defeats the enemy and creates a period of peace. But then, rather than dying, Christ lives forever, right? It's the repetition of the story, okay? But the twist at the end that I think makes Christianity really, really cool, you know? So, yeah. And also you can have very putty humor, dark assassins who are also used of God and are ranked, if not the best, then he's among the best up there. Okay, yeah, because he took this proactive action, right? Okay, and here's what happens. Okay, I think in this kind of Christian life, and I think why reading the Judges and seeing the pattern is important. Okay, it's because we are called to enter this life. Okay, we are called to when we're in trouble, call it for deliverance. But we're also kind of called to act like Christ, act like a deliverer. Okay, where what happens is that we where we hear people calling out for deliverance, and we point them to the ultimate deliverer, but we come in and give them deliverance, okay, and to help give people peace, rest, right, okay, and for that we can also participate, okay, in this life of Christ, right? Because what Jesus says is, I do what I see my Father doing, right? And in Christianity, we are invited in to also be sons of God, right? To also do what we see our Father doing, right? And what we see in this is an opportunity to pray in an intercessory manner for other people, and we also see that that we can be deliverers, people who see people who are being oppressed and bring them justice and peace, right? And that's the pattern that that's being set up here. Okay. um, and I think it's interesting because what we see is not God himself coming down to deal with all the problems, but but he raises up people to deliver them from problems, you know? And so what I would say is that Jesus is the ultimate culmination of the pattern of Judges, right? That we see here, okay? Um, and of the pattern of Exodus, right? Where we kind of have a very similar sort of setup, right? And then what happens is that Jesus then invites us in to participation with doing the same things that he did. So I'm probably talking a little bit circular right now. I hope you enjoyed reading Judges 1 through that, and I 1 through 3. Update all. I might have screwed this up. I need to go to YouTube and see if I messed this up. Okay. You see if what my live stream that I'm doing is called. Okay, cool. Okay, big with live stream. Come help me figure out. Okay, good. I did not completely mess this up. Anyway, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed studying with me, and have a great day.